Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Jacob.
Hey, today is our all-English unit. It's also our news watch, so Jacob and I will try to speak a little bit more slowly, more clearly. If we use words we typically don't, we'll try to explain them. I think you're really good about that, Jacob. You'll stop and spell out a word, which is really helpful.
Great.
Sometimes we will use, idioms or phrases that we're very familiar with, but maybe you don't know what they are. You've never heard of them or heard them used. We'll try to explain better that way, too, because there is no Chinese teacher today.
Oh.
No. So we've got two different stories. As we usually do, one of us will read the first story with the headline, and then we'll go on and read the second story, and then we'll be back to explain some of these things. We've got a manuscript writing cafe. I thought this was an interesting idea. I have opinions on it, of course. And then the second story takes place in Vietnam, which is just a close neighbor to us here in Taiwan. We're going to find out what they're doing. Have you been to Vietnam?
I have not. I've been to Japan. I think we may have talked about that.
Disneyland in Tokyo.
Yep. But no, Vietnam I haven't been to. Of course, the United States has a difficult history with Vietnam, but now, of course, we're, I think, closer allies or not so much fighting anymore. But yeah, Vietnam is a place with a very interesting culture and an interesting history. There's a French influence in Vietnam, which is interesting as well. So I haven't been, but I'd like to go there someday.
Yeah, I haven't had the chance to go yet, so looking forward to that. I love their food, and the people, I understand, are very welcoming and kind. So let's get started, guys. We're going to read through today's unit first.
Kawaii Takuya's business was struggling due to COVID-19. Because of Tokyo's pandemic prevention regulations, people couldn't come to his live streaming studio. When he was able to reopen the space, he did so with a new vision. Only people working under a deadline would be allowed in the manuscript writing cafe. Now, when customers arrive, they are directed to fill out a goal card, which says what they intend to accomplish in their time at the cafe. They must also choose which level of attention they desire, determined by 3 modes. If a customer chooses mild mode, they'll only be asked if they finished everything when they pay. For those who choose normal mode, a cafe employee will check on them every hour. However, for hard mode, customers will receive ample attention from staff members who will look over their shoulder to ensure they are on task. Though this experience might sound intimidating, Kawaii's intentions are good. He says his goal is not to monitor people, but support them. It seems to be working, as customers keep coming.
Vietnamese loggers make a career change for the good of the forest. Tourism is often cited as a harmful practice that contributes to environmental destruction. One tourism company is aiming to change that in Vietnam, where it has hired loggers as tour guides. The loggers, who used to illegally cut down trees in protected areas, now put their knowledge to work for the greater good. Illegal loggers have an excellent understanding of the forest. They remember where certain kinds of trees grow, and they also know how to get logs to market via hidden paths. These skills make them perfect tour guides. In addition to guide duties, the former loggers remove poachers' animal traps and clean up trash. As they wander through the forest, they no longer see a tree as a commodity to be exploited. They see it for the rare and valuable thing that it is, and they do their best to impress this on the tourists they show around.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our article for Newswatch, Under Pressure at the Manuscript Writing Cafe. This sounds interesting, this first news story that we have here. Okay, if you're under pressure, it means that just you feel like some weight coming down on you. Maybe your parents or your boss or your teacher is kind of pointing their finger at you and telling you that you have to do something, and maybe you don't really want to, or, again, when we get older, we might feel some pressure, like you have to find a job, you have to find a place to live, you have to buy food every day. These are things that maybe as young people we don't understand, but as we get older, we recognize these pressures more and more. So if we're under pressure, it's not really a good feeling, right?
No, it's not. Sometimes we'll run into friends and they'll look really tired or kind of anxious or stressed out, and we'll say, hey, what's up? What's the problem? Oh, I'm under a lot of pressure from my boss. So, being under pressure is no fun. Why is this in the title? Well, somebody's under pressure, and they're at the Manuscript Writing Cafe. What's a manuscript? A manuscript is usually just a book or a piece of writing that someone has written before it's printed.
Yeah.
Once it's printed, we don't call it a manuscript anymore. We also use the word manuscript to describe a writing that was written long ago.
Okay.
So ancient transcripts or manuscripts that were found. But you'll use it perhaps if you become an author one day, and you could say, I sent my finished manuscript to my publisher today.
Yeah.
So that would be a nice feeling, actually. You're no longer under pressure if you finished it.
Right.
So that's manuscript.
It's kind of a fancy word, right?
Yeah.
We don't usually use manuscript. Like, you wouldn't say like, oh, excuse me, Mr. Smith, my English teacher, here's my manuscript. I finished it. You would say you finished your essay or you finished your paper. But like Stephanie said, if you're writing a book, before you submit it to the publisher, you could say, oh, I'm about finished with my manuscript.
Right.
And then, of course, after it's published, it becomes a book. So, right. Before, people would have their manuscripts actually printed out. And if you lost that, you'd be in trouble because it wasn't saved on a computer or anything like that. So the manuscript was very important. If you lost that, you're in trouble.
There were no copies unless you hand copied it.
Right. Now you have it on your computer at home, so you can just go back and, copy the file onto your flash drive or something. But before, when everything was typed or written, if you lost your manuscript, then you'd be in big trouble.
Yeah, I almost wanted to say you'd be 完蛋了, but we're not using Chinese today.
Oh, right. All
That's
English.
An example. That automatically comes to my head. You would be in big trouble. So we've got this character. His name's Kawaii Takuya. He's got a business in Tokyo, but like everybody else's businesses during COVID, it was struggling. So he wasn't getting enough customers willing to come in. People were afraid. So he was not doing well with his business. So because of the pandemic, there were prevention regulations that were required by most governments. People couldn't come to his live streaming studio. So maybe he interviewed guests or did something where he was broadcasting a message out to the public. Most people nowadays know what live streaming is. It's just broadcasting something over the internet, typically. Yeah. And it's very popular by social media influencers, either on Instagram or YouTube or Rumble. People are live streaming. Well, they couldn't come to his studio because of the prevention regulations. Prevention is a noun and it's non-count. It just means when something bad is stopped from happening. You might have seen the two words put together: crime prevention, accident prevention, fire prevention.
Fire prevention, yeah.
How to keep from having fires start. So prevention is a good thing. So what's a regulation?
A regulation is sort of a fancy word for a rule.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are certain regulations that you might encounter. For instance, if a store will have some regulations, like if you're not wearing a shirt, you can't just walk into the store. They'll say, no, you got to put a shirt on. Now, during the pandemic, some regulations that people are familiar with are mask wearing. If you're indoors in a shop or something like that, you would have to put a mask on. Some other regulations would be social distancing regulations. You would try and stay a certain distance apart from people. These are some of the regulations that we are now familiar with in the past few years.
But notice we don't use regulations if you're talking about the rules your parents give you or some of the schools, especially in the classroom. There might be some more official regulations the school has, but your teacher might say, hey, in my classroom, we have a rule. You
Follow
can't
the
talk.
rules.
Yeah, you can't talk while I'm teaching the lesson. So regulations are official rules or orders from usually a government agency or someone who has authority. So because of these prevention regulations, Kauai was losing business. So when he was able to reopen his space, he did so with a new vision. Sounds like he changed his business plan completely. So when you start your own business, you usually have an idea of what you want to provide in terms of goods or services. His new idea was only people working under a deadline would be allowed in the manuscript writing cafe. So if you have a deadline, you have some sort of date or time by which you have to have something complete. So I was just talking to a director this morning, and he said, I got 3 hours of sleep last night because I have a tight deadline.
Right.
So he just doesn't feel like he can sleep at all. Deadlines are no fun, but we all have deadlines. You have deadlines for papers if you're a student. Maybe you have to finish your research paper by the 15th of the month. Deadlines are important, and as you get older, you must hit or reach the deadline. You don't want to go beyond that, or you get in trouble or lose business.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so only people that have this pressure, this deadline that's maybe a few days or even a few hours in the future, they are the only people who can come to the writing cafe. It's interesting. You think of a cafe as a relaxing place where you can just sit there quietly and read your book and enjoy your cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But at this place, you have people that are basically working, they're probably on their computers and they have a deadline. So it means it's not really a relaxing time. It sounds more like a work time to me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Now, when customers arrive, they are directed to fill out a goal card. You have to actually write out your goals when you go to the manuscript writing cafe. To fill out is a verb phrase we use when we're writing down some information that's needed, maybe on an official document or form. Fill this out, please, and then return it. If you go to the doctor's office, before there were all these computers, we would always fill out these forms.
Right.
So fill out. They'd have to say what they intend to accomplish. What's your goal? What do you want to have done by the time you leave? They must also choose which level of attention they desire. Or in my mind, I thought, which level of harassment they desire. If you harass somebody, you kind of bug them until, you drive them crazy.
Right.
So I thought, they have 3 different modes. What is a mode, Jacob?
A mode is kind of the same thing that we talk about as like a level or a degree. When I see the word mode, I think of maybe a video game. Is it an easy mode, a medium mode, or a hard mode?
Yeah.
And that kind of describes the difficulty that someone will have playing the game. If you play on easy mode, then a beginner can play. Your mom can play. Anybody can play. But then as it gets harder, you kind of up the mode. You up the degree of difficulty to medium or hard. So yeah, mode is kind of like a level. And the modes here we have mild mode in the cafe. That means that no one will bother you. They'll only ask you it when you're done. Oh, did you get everything finished? Okay, so that's mild.
Yeah.
Mild kind of means more relaxed, kind of more pleasant, not too overbearing maybe. Okay, so there's mild mode. Then what other modes do we have? Normal mode.
Yeah. Normal is when a cafe employee will check on them every hour. So they'll come over every hour on the hour probably and say, hey, Are you getting anything done? Are you wasting time? So the hard mode, though, customers will receive ample attention. Ample means plenty.
Yes.
You have plenty of something. So they'll have plenty of attention from staff members who will look over their shoulder to ensure they are on task and they aren't surfing the internet, looking at FB or Instagram. You can't do that, it sounds like, at this cafe. So though this experience might sound intimidating, Kauai's intentions are good. He means well. We often will say that. Well, he means well. It just, maybe the product that you get from this isn't quite what he expected. But intimidating is something that makes you feel worried, kind of
or even scared,
Yeah, it
right?
takes away some of your confidence. If someone's intimidating physically, they might be much taller and bigger than you and maybe feel a little threatening. So you can decide, though, which mode you prefer if you go to this cafe.
Yeah, and it sounds like the prices will have to be a little bit higher. So, if a cup of coffee normally costs, say, $5 or something, if you go to this cafe, you might get a cup of coffee, and then the extra service, you'll have to pay for that too, probably a little bit, right? Because someone's going to,
I would assume,
keep their eye on you.
So it seems to be working. It says here that his customers keep coming. We wish him a lot of success in his business, but this is one writing cafe I will not be going to.
You're not into it?
No. We're going to take a quick break, guys, and then we'll be back to talk about our next story. Welcome back, guys. We're on our all-English unit, and it's Newswatch, so we're moving on to the next story. As you know, if there's a title on a news story, we don't call it a title. We call it a headline. So I remember when I was growing up, CNN was the first cable news channel, and they had this one variation of news that was called headline news. And they wouldn't give you many details of the story. They'd just kind of tell you the headlines and say a couple of sentences and then move on.
Okay.
So headline. It doesn't tell you everything. It just gives you an idea of what the story includes. And notice that the grammar is incomplete. Those aren't complete sentences. So if it looks weird, it's because it's a headline.
Yeah, this is a good headline because it actually gives us an idea of what the article contains.
Yeah.
If you surf the internet these days, you find these things that we like to call clickbait headlines.
Yeah.
And a clickbait headline, it won't give you all the information. But
sometimes it's even false.
Right. But it will present the article in such a way that you want to click on the story to read it.
Yeah. They want your money.
Yeah. And so it's like, oh, you have to find out why these loggers are making a career change or something like that. So you do have to be careful. A good headline will tell you what you need to know. But these days, not every headline is written that way.
No, it's all about money. Every time you click, they get revenue or money from advertising. So be careful with those. So we've got loggers. A logger is someone whose job is to cut down trees.
Right.
So when I was growing up, we called them lumberjacks. So it's a synonym, logger or lumberjack. Yeah, so they've got these loggers who are making a career change. They're changing their careers for the good of the forest. So they're doing something that actually is helping the forest in Vietnam.
Right. And a career change is basically when you have one job and then all of a sudden you think to yourself, oh, I want to do something different.
Yeah.
And so then you can do something incredibly different. Some people are like, oh, I'm a lawyer, and then, oh, I don't really like the law, so I decide to open a restaurant, and then I become a chef or something like that.
A lot of people go from these office jobs, tax accountant, attorney, to being a chef.
Right. So it's interesting. It's just, I guess they feel that their life is short and they want to do something that
you enjoy.
They enjoy or they find more fulfilling, let's say. And so, so they have a career change. But this is a career change that's a little interesting because these loggers, we're going to find out, they might not really be good people in the beginning here.
So tourism is often cited as a harmful practice. If you cite something, it just means it's given as an example. So tourism is often given as an example as some sort of harmful practice that contributes to environmental destruction. Destruction is one of our vocabulary words, and it means the act of destroying something or totally ruining something.
Yeah.
So that is a really harmful practice if it's hurting the environment. One tourism company is aiming, that's just means their goal is to change that in Vietnam, where it has hired loggers as tour guides, which is so interesting because I pictured loggers as these big, muscle-bound guys, you know. That's a dangerous job to be a logger or a lumberjack. They're hiring them as tour guides, which is kind of fun.
Right. Okay, so of course in Vietnam there's a lot of jungles and a lot of woods and things like that. And so you have people who earn a living by cutting down trees and making logs out of the trees. Okay, so but these guys, these loggers, are being hired as tour guides. The loggers who used to illegally cut down trees in protected areas now put their knowledge to work for the greater good. Okay, so this is a good move. These loggers, they used to. When you see used to here, it means something that was done before. Okay, so these loggers, they used to illegally cut down trees. This is what they used to do. They did this in the past. They did this before. So if you ever say used to, I used to do this, it means that you did it before, but you no longer do it. You've stopped doing it. You're doing something else now, for instance. So they used to cut down trees in protected areas. This, of course, is illegal. It's against the law. If you have a protected area, you can't just go in and start cutting down trees. The government has set up this area to protect the wildlife, to protect the trees or anything there. And so loggers, they would go in there and they would illegally cut down these trees. But now, instead of being loggers, they are tour guides. So they're putting their knowledge to work for the greater good. They're no longer harming the environment. They're going to try and help the environment.
Right. Jacob really explained used to very well. But when you hear Native Americans or Canadians speak, we're not going to say used to, guys. We talk faster than that, so you're going to hear used to do something. And it sounds like we're saying USE, used to. Used to, but it is the past tense. Who used to do something they did in the past but no longer. So be careful when you're listening. Remember, used to is really pronounced used to. So illegal loggers have an excellent understanding of the forest. Some of them have probably worked in the forests around that country for many years. They remember where certain kinds of trees grow. So if someone wanted to maybe go and take a look at a certain type of tree who's really interested in trees in general, they would probably enjoy having one of these loggers as a guide. They also know how to get logs to market via hidden paths. So when you cut down the tree, you then turn that whole tree into logs. And then you have to go to market. And they're using hidden paths, paths that most people don't know exist. Via is just mean by way of or through this means. It's also pronounced via. You'll hear people say it either way, via or via. They're both correct. These skills make them perfect tour guides, which makes sense.
That's right. So this is like they're kind of changing their lives for the better because now they're no longer doing illegal things and they can earn some money because they probably have to support themselves or they have families to support. And so this sounds like it's a win-win. It's a win for these loggers. It's a win for the environment. It's a win for tourists who come to the country and want to be shown around the forest. So this is a great thing. Okay, let's continue. In addition to guide duties, the former loggers remove poachers' animal traps and clean up trash. Okay, this is good. So in a forest, you have illegal logging. You might also have illegal hunting of animals. And illegal hunting means poaching. Okay, so we have the verb poach, P-O-A-C-H, and someone who does this, someone who hunts animals illegally, you would call this person a poacher. I think we see this word sometimes when we hear about stories in Africa where someone will go and kill a rhino to cut off his horn because it's made of ivory, right?
Or the elephant.
Or the elephant tusks are made of ivory. These are very expensive, sought-after things in some cultures. And so, so hunters will hunt these animals and they will kill them illegally. This is called poaching. And so what we have here in Vietnam is we have these loggers turned tour guides who remove these poachers' traps, which is great. So that means that the animals that they're hunting won't be killed if you can take away the traps.
Right. So in addition to that, they're helping remove the poachers' animal traps. Also, poachers aren't just illegally hunting. They're on property that doesn't belong to them.
Okay.
Could be property that the government owns. It could be private property. You cannot go onto somebody else's property and just, hunt for anything you want. That's illegal. So, they're doing some good things as they wander through the forest. If you wander, it just means you walk kind of leisurely. You don't have a specific deadline to get to a certain place. You just kind of wander or roam. You could use that word roam too, R-O-A-M. As they wander through the forest, they no longer see a tree as a commodity to be exploited. A commodity is a product that's bought and sold. So if you're into the stock market, there's something called the futures market where you can buy futures on different commodities. My dad was into copper futures, oil and gas. You can also check out sugar commodities, wheat commodities. Those are commodities. Just means something that's bought and sold. Agricultural commodities, or you might see in the news, the commodity prices fell last week. So they no longer see it as just something that can they can sell it and be rewarded with money. Now, if you exploit something, you use something for your own good, which hurts somebody else. So if someone's exploited, they're taken advantage of. So you make full use of that resource or person, but it's often unfair or in a selfish way that it happens. So they're no longer seeing these trees they used to cut down illegally as a commodity to be exploited.
Right, it's no longer something that they can chop down and take it to the market and sell it, but it's something that can be protected. They see it for the rare and valuable thing that it is. Okay, so it's not just some wood, it's an actual tree growing in the forest. And they do their best to impress this on the tourists they show around. Okay, so if you impress something on someone else, impress something on someone else, you kind of try and tell that person how important something is. So again, they're kind of like being teachers, right? When we if we take a tour of something and there's a guide who's showing us around, they're also teaching us about stuff, right? They might be teaching us the history or the culture or something like that. So these tour guides are teaching us how important the trees are. They're impressing upon us. You can use impress on or
I use impress upon as well.
Right. They can impress upon us how important these trees are to the environment, to the animals that live in the forest, for clean air, right? Trees are very helpful to us for many reasons.
Here's another example. I used to babysit a lot for my mom when she would go shopping sometimes. I'm the oldest girl in the family. So she would always impress upon me that I needed to keep my eye on the little ones because they were always getting into trouble.
Yes.
So really impressed upon. So if somebody impresses upon you the importance of something, it's very clear that you need to be paying attention.
That's right.
So it's kind of fun. Well, those are the two stories for today, guys. We're out of time. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us for our next program. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Jacob.
Bye.
Bye-bye.